All right. So welcome all the principals and the directors of really amazing and top schools and all the dignitaries here in this very exclusive and exciting roundtable discussion that we are having. So we have had a couple of roundtables in the previous week, but this is going to be the last round of roundtable that we are doing for all the principals of different schools regarding the National Innovation and Entrepreneurship Promotion and Policy, which was released by Central Board of Secondary Education and the Ministry of Education for all the schools, and had asked for the schools to submit their feedback by the 20th of April, which is tomorrow. Now, let me introduce myself. My name is Samuel. I represent Think Startup, and I actually want to share a couple of thoughts, right? Um, Entrepreneurship is something which is actually instilled in our DNA since our childhood. We grow with our instincts to build, to break, to think out of the box, right? And I think one of the major uh, you can call it the gap in our education system right now was that how do we let those students to realize their dreams, to actually give them a platform in our traditional ecosystem of education in schools, wherein they actually learn how to not just ideate, not to just dream about their ideas, but also to bring those ideas into reality. So Think Startup has taken the initiative to do this roundtable with all the dignitary members and all the respected principals and the directors here, so that we could initiate a very productive dialogue, share our thoughts, and have a very exciting round of discussions and interactions in the next 1 hour. So with your kind of permission, I would like to hand this stage over to Mr. Shivesh, who is the co-founder of Think Startup. And let's start the roundtable on a very exciting note, and let's all share our views and opinions and make this discussion a productive one. Sir, it's totally over to you.
Right. So good afternoon, friends. Great to see all of you here. And the idea of this roundtable was to engage into this conversation of how should the innovation stroke entrepreneurship, uh, education, and the ecosystem should look for young minds. And the premise of this discussion is the policy paper which has been circulated on 31st March by Innovation Cell of Ministry of Education and the Senate Board for Secondary Education, and that sets the framework of innovation and entrepreneurship education countrywide rolling, and it also lays down the roadmap of how the policymakers are looking at this landscape. And my job is fairly simple. I'm going to be talking about the policy, and what I'm going to do is lay open some questions for all the experts who are here, and then build on the collective learning of everyone. Following me is Mrs. Nidhi Thapar, Vice President, Academics of Ryan Education Group, and she's going to be speaking about how her group went on, rolling out the entrepreneurship stroke innovation stuff in their school, and then we have this roundtable where we move forward. And happy for everyone to be contributing and collective learning into a new journey. So basically, I start with a fairly simple question, right? Why the need for NIEPP? Anyone could speak, or you can use the chat box to put your thoughts that you have, right? Why today we are discussing this whole thing called National Innovation Entrepreneurship Promotion Policy? What was the pressing need, right? And there could be various answers to it. Or anyone can unmute and speak. It would be great to have this conversation.
Because change cycles are getting shorter, So when I say change cycles, all of us know that change is imminent and we kind of deal with it day in and day out with our students. But the rate at which change keeps coming to the society is getting shorter and shorter. For us to move from telegraph to telephone took more than 50 years. Telephone to pager took less than 30 years. Pager to mobile took less than 3-4 years, and mobile telephony to FaceTime took like less than that either. So the pace of change is much faster, and people have to learn, as students, they will have to learn to adjust as well as lead that change. So I think that's why we must have a very cohesive and something that we can apply at schools. So yeah, that would be my
Thanks, Meenal. So thanks a ton for this, bringing this whole thing of the speed of change, right? And
yes.
Bill Gates wrote a lovely book, Business at the Speed of Thought, 1996, right? And all the things that he imagined in that book in 1996, believe me not, most of those 100 ideas that he gave is really true, right? And that guy, he was able to imagine those stuff. And that really was at the fag end of the last century. And 21st century, when we came, we suddenly realized what you say, pace of change. We are in a technology world, and competing with technology is another set of thing which is now codified in this whole 3 words called sustainable development goal, right? And both these things are going on together, and the world is looking for more and more innovation for things to move forward. Now, when the world is looking for more and more innovation, and actually world has been moving, as Meenal rightly said, at a speed much faster. Is the education system keeping pace, right? So sometimes I get a feeling, and all of us as collective educators, that are we living in a 21st century world with really 20th is a good word, right? But sometimes it could also be 19th century model of education. And I had a great conversation with Vice Chancellor of Cambridge University around this theme, right? The world has changed, but the model of education still remains stuck in the past. Now that's one. The other is, especially to India, right? There is a great hunger in the Indian society for something which we are now nourishing this thought of India's century. And not just Indians as a whole, right? Jeff Bezos, when he came to India, he said that this is going to be India's century, right? So these things are the things which are sort of driving society for to move into a new direction, to build a new society, and that perhaps is telling us that we really have to change. Now, the hard question is, can India really become a superpower with that old model? Right? Can we really become a superpower with that old model? And when I say old model, I really have crystallized it into 3 simple phrases, right? It might sound very boring, right, to educators, but this is how society is shaped up, right? So padho, exam, and I have a son who's in class 10th, and I see this exam, and marks, right? So we have sort of simplified the whole bit of education into these 2 or 3 phrases, right? And that's sort of the thing that we as educators have to, and I'm not saying that educators have to blame, but we as educators have to find answers to this, because the best changes in society have also been driven by educators. So this is a time for us to really look at this whole thing, which we call the boxed in mindset. The labels are ascribed. If you get great marks in maths, to aapko engineer banna hai. If you get great marks in bio, then you have to become a doctor. If you get great marks in commerce, to phir aapko CA banna hai. Right? So those sort of thing which is there in the society, and we perhaps are witness to these issues in education. And the real question is, can we actually become superpower with that mindset? And in my mind, the answer is is a clear no, right? And that's why I gave up a good, corporate bureaucrat job, all that, to venture into the space of education, especially innovation education and entrepreneurship education for the last 15 years. Now, before I move forward, I have one more teaser for all the educators, and this is a longitudinal study conducted by NASA on 1,600 adults across various age groups. And the question is, where does creativity go? Right? And all 4 to 5 year old display the IQ or the creativity equivalent to an Einstein, right? And something happens in society between the age 4 and age 15 that 98% of the kids, the creativity drops down to 12%. Right, so that's something which is there, and great work is happening in on this space, right? So John Harris, for example, conducted a study, and that study was on average between 2 to 4, a kid asks 40,000 questions. At the age of 4, perhaps kids are asking 200 questions a day. And what is interesting is those 200 questions a day are mostly asked when the kid is inside the house. But when the kid comes to school, those 200 questions really falls down to less than 10 questions or maybe 20 questions a day inside the classroom. And that's something that we really have to ask, right? So all of you would be aware of these studies, and this is the paradigm in which we are living. Now, perhaps NIEPP is trying to ask us to think collectively and do some course correction, and they want to build something, which is in the broad framework of, call it 21st century skill, call it entrepreneurial skills. If you look at these keywords, UNESCO and Harvard and CBSE, they all rolled out something called 21st century skills, and 7 21st century skills were there. But all these keywords, when you look at things like innovation, critical thinking, problem solving, strategic thinking, real world stuff, learning to accept from failure, all these things point to nearly the same stuff. And this is the stuff that CBSE is looking to build in the framework or in the broader context of NIEPP. They have said that these are 10 skills. Now, from my own understanding, what I did was I have tried to map up the stakeholders for change. Now, in these stakeholders for change, I have also done some color coding, and you have to excuse me for trying to pass judgment into a whole lot of stuff. But really, if we really want this change to happen, there is obviously learner, faculty, and institutions, and at least 2 of the stakeholders are here. The next is curriculum designers, and all the things which I have put in yellow. I think the policy is still very, very ambivalent or more silent on those aspects. So the involvement of community, and when I say community, it's not the startup community per se, but the society and the parents who form the nebulous of community. Because if this change has to happen without the societal and parental involvement, the padho, marks, those sort of mindset is not going to vanish. And finally, one of the things which I have put in red, which is there for all educators to discuss, I think if this change has to happen, we really have to look at this whole thing called exam and boards in a different manner. And when I say it has to be looked in a different manner, essentially, I have entrepreneurial society or entrepreneurial kids as the framework, as the reference point. So that's why I put this as red. Now, what the policy has done, it has created 6 foundational pillars. And most of you would have read, but just I'm going to do a quick recap. So the first pillar is something around this thing called the mindset change. And if you have been following what Delhi government has been doing, something in the form of EMC, entrepreneurial mindset curriculum, it might really look similar, right? And it also ties down to maybe the school innovation ambassador framework, for which policy has also been circulated by CBSE. So those sort of stuff. There is also the desire to do ranking of schools on innovation basis. And the motive behind this desire is that if you start ranking schools, then it creates some sort of competition between progressive schools and leading schools, and that sort of takes everyone, everyone moves ahead. So that's the first part of the first pillar. The second pillar is about the hard and soft skills to nurture innovation. When I say hard skills, essentially it's about creating the infrastructure for innovation and entrepreneurship. And think of infrastructure for innovation and entrepreneurship. Today, if we have to really look at, scratch the school infrastructure, perhaps we have something called tinkering labs. But the society is, but the policy is telling us to look beyond the tinkering labs and think in terms of idea lab, prototyping lab, maker spaces. We at Think Startup, we have combined this whole concept into something called entrepreneurship lab. And those labs are now functional in some of the schools, right? So, or call it pre-incubation centers, digital libraries, and those sort of stuff. So that's the hard infrastructure. The soft is all around building the pool of mentors, which could be in-house, which is the teacher-led, and also in engaging the larger society to build the mentor pool. So that's the second pillar. The third pillar is all around incentives and motivating teachers to create continuous professional development or skilling program for teachers, such that the teachers that we have, they can be used into innovation. Now, one checkpoint which I really want to bring at this discussion is in the last 15 years of our work in building innovation. Can I request friends who are to go mute if they're not speaking? Thanks. So in the last 15 years, what we have realized, innovation, and all of you also realize that innovation is a horizontal skill. It's not as much a vertical skill. And when we say horizontal skill, it cuts across the axis of various streams of knowledge. So it could be a physics and maths combined together to create innovation, a bio and chemistry combined to create innovation, or bio and geography combined to create innovation, and those sort of stuff. So innovation is a horizontal skill. It is not a subject which has to be put under or clubbed under a commerce teacher or a chemistry teacher, right? And same holds true with entrepreneurship. So that recognition is very important. And then the fourth pillar is rightly about curriculums and pedagogy and those sort of stuff that I talked about. So create a cross-disciplinary learning model, and then build things, build mindset for problem solving, risk taking, failure management, and those sort of stuff. So that's what policy is talking about. Now, fifth and sixth pillar are something which is very important, and I think they are sort of they take the whole policy into a new paradigm. Now, the fifth pillar is about school community collaboration, and I think when I read the policy, this community collaboration is only about the startup community collaboration. But my desire is that it has to be with the larger, simple society collaboration, where we involve parents into this dialogue, because unless we involve parents into this dialogue, the policy is not, in my opinion, it's not going to move too far. And finally, where the policy is a major digression in thinking and a big change, a big wind of change is this whole paradigm called student-led startups. Now, believe me, today, even the college education policy is not very solidly confidently talking about student-led startups, right? Maybe only the engineering and professional colleges are talking about. But just a sec. Friends, may I request you to mute? Yeah. So when I am talking about this student-led startup, there are few very interesting things which are there, and I'll cover those things as we move forward. Now, the policy talks about it takes root from 5+3+3+4 framework, and it says that entrepreneurship education has to begin right from class 3. And start celebrating innovation days, get into project-based learning activities, and those sort of stuff. That's in the between class 3 to 5. Then in the middle school, have 10 bagless days. Bring in the concept of internship, have ideathons, create mentor networks, have financial and legal literacy, and those sort of stuff. And finally, for the higher school, the policy is saying that minimum 2 hours of tinkering. Bring, we call it SIR, which is schools in students in residence program, and in the college space, what we have equivalent called EIR, which is called the Entrepreneur in Residence program. So that equivalence is there. Build innovation council in school, nominate an innovation coordinator in school, have ideathons, awards, create mentor network, create an innovation fund outside within the school budget. From the school budget, create a innovation fund and nominate and designate it separately as innovation fund, which will be used for the purpose of innovation. Build angel fund linkages, which means that create school angel fund platforms. And we at Think Startup already created school angel fund platforms, right? And then have things around financial and legal literacy. So that's how this whole student-led startup thing is changing. I just want to build on this. Now, in terms of operationalizing this policy, it says that nominate a nodal ideation, innovation, entrepreneurship leader in schools, train 5 teachers in ideation, design thinking, product development, intellectual property, finance, and sales. Set up innovation fund from within the school budget, get into incubator partnerships, and there the policy is leaving a lot of scope. So it says that build special purpose vehicles, right? It has not elaborated too much, but there's a concept of building special purpose vehicles, a joint venture, incubator partnerships. So if there is incubator in society where you are, have a relationship with them, and then provide incubation facility to school students. Now, in a major departure, the policy also says that teachers and schools which are supporting innovation and entrepreneurship, there should be provision for equity for teachers in those ventures. And it has laid down a guideline for that, but it's only a guideline, and those commercial relationships could be structured in any possible manner. Teachers can also take sabbatical if they are supporting innovation. Now, in all these sense, friend, the policy is a new paradigm. It's a new way of thinking, and it is going to present a lot of new challenges. And maybe the schools have to really ask for support. You, as educators, principals, you have to file a response to this policy by 20th April, which is tomorrow, right? And one of the ideas of getting into this conversation was to come to some common ground in terms of thinking of the kind of challenges and support that the schools require. And that I would request, when we have the panel of principals who are discussing, we discuss those. Now, just to put things in your mouth, maybe, and I should not be doing, but just to put things in your mouth. Look, Niti Aayog went ahead when they were setting up ATLs. They created a support mechanism for school, right? So there was a funding mechanism, a support mechanism for school to set up ATLs. And I think such asks are going to be very important for incubators to be set up, for e-labs to be set up in schools, such that we really move ahead to build this climate of entrepreneurship inside schools. Now, just to put another data point, the EMC budget for Delhi government was 60 crores, which was only available to government schools, right? So you can do the maths, come to some numbers, but essentially, if we really have to roll this out, and we are really desirous of doing all this, because we at Think Startup have full capability to do all this, and are in active engagement with the Ministry of Education and CBSE for the rollout of all this. But I think a collective common ground is important for a successful rollout. With this, I close. I really would want you to hold your thoughts for a while, because I would now invite Nidhi, Nidhi Thapar, who is Vice President Academics of Ryan Education Group, to share her experience, because we have interacted with a lot of schools, and I really liked the way she went ahead thinking about rolling out on the building entrepreneurship ecosystem for Ryan Education Group. So Nidhi, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Shrivesh, and a very good afternoon to all the panelists and, of course, the dear educators who are there. I think, Shrivesh, you've set the right tone for this closed group discussion that you've set for this afternoon. I think you've clearly detailed out the aspects of the draft which CBSE has shared, that's on national innovation and the entrepreneurship promotion guidelines, specially curated for schools. And let me at the outset share with you that the first time when I saw this draft, it was a very gratifying experience and a sense of feeling for me, because CBSE has released this document now. While at Ryan Edunation, we got into this foray of developing the innovation mindset nearly 5 years back when we set up innovation labs in our school. Followed, say, around 2.5 years back when we started talking about entrepreneurship and how to initiate practices that would help our learners develop this aspect of their personality. But before I get into the details of what we did, why we did it, and how we did it, it is important to understand that entrepreneurship or innovation is not something that should be taken up in isolation. And even if you've gone through the draft document, I think that thing comes out very, very clearly. It has to be integrated in anything and everything that is happening at your school. And another important thing while we venture on this journey is to keep in mind that we are talking about a mindset here. It's a mindset and not a skill. Once the mindset change happens or the mindset shift happens, then the skill part becomes much easier and probably will be an immediate fallout of that. Now coming to the point of why did we at Ryan Edunation started with the Innovation Academy at our school or entrepreneurship and how we went about it. Obviously, we do a lot of teacher training workshops, and during my interactions with the teachers, I would often ask them, what kind of job opportunities were there when they were in school, and if they were the same at present. I'm sure all of you know the answer to this is always a resounding no. Which brings us to the point, do we even know what we are preparing our students for? Now, these students are under our care. There is a lot of trust that has been placed in us by the parents and other stakeholders. So we can help them. What is it that we can do for these children? We don't know what the the world will be in the next 10 years or 15 years when they will be professionally ready to venture out. So what is it that we can do? Obviously, we can develop their mindsets and skills that would help them traverse this uncertain world ahead. So that was our trigger and the starting point. To even talk about our vision statement, our vision statement also clearly articulates that we are nurturing the 21st century global citizens. Each of our practices, plans, and programs focus on developing these 21st century skills in our learning. So nothing happens in isolation. As I said, entrepreneurship is about a mindset, whether we talk about the growth mindset, the team mindset, or the maker mindset. It is also about having the drive to ideate, to experiment, to problem solve, to take risks, learn from failures, self-belief, resilience, decisiveness, flexibility. All of this is what, I think Shrivesh was also talking about some of these elements. This is what is entrepreneurship all about. And this clearly means that if this is what we want our children to develop, there has to be a paradigm shift in the teaching learning process. I cannot have a teacher-led class wherein the teacher tells the student what to do and then expects them to ideate and create. So as a first step, what is it that we did? We changed our complete process of teaching and learning. Our pedagogical practices at present ensure that we have student-led classes. we create opportunities within a classroom or within the school space or the community for them to explore, experiment, ideate, draw conclusions and inferences. And hence, that's why I say they lead their own learning. So while we made the teaching learning process a shift towards that, we also set up innovation labs or innovation academies in our school. This also is a physical space where children get to ideate and create. We've had students creating a lot of prototypes. So be it with the different kind of use of magnets, if it's the use of sensors, motors, whatever you can dream of, happen. And it is not whether in grade 5, am I going to be doing, basic circuit, electrical circuits, so grade 5 will only do it. We went ahead and introduced it even earlier. Magnetic forces, etc. They themselves understood the use of magnets and different kinds of magnets that were available, and then they applied and created prototypes. So that's something, the other step we took towards the development of what I call the entrepreneurship mindset. While we traverse the path of getting our learners to think, reason, ideate, we also sense the need for further enhancing the entrepreneurship mindset, which goes a little step further than this. And that was the time, I got in touch with Shivesh and his team. Let me tell you, there was months of deliberations that happened before we even came together and decided and aligned on the expectations, the outcomes, and that's when we introduced that program in our schools. I won't get into the details of what Shivesh and his team does, because I was joking with him yesterday and I was telling him, I said, Shivesh, I'm not going to be becoming the launch pad for your organization. But at the same time, I would like to specify here that how shared vision between two partners helps achieve the desired outcomes or the goals. It is because this vision of Think Startup and Ryan Education kind of aligned, that's when we set on this journey together. If I were to talk about how the students started thinking differently in these few months where we got them to, undergo, if I can call, for a lack of a better term, probably the entrepreneurship program framework, we had within a few months students making idea pitches. For me, the high point was not the product that they were talking about that was going to solve an existing problem. For me, it was the entire process. The process of being able to think differently, the process of understanding the need for surveys and then designing market surveys. Once the surveys are done, analyzing those, also looking at what is the other information available, what is the other data available, and then analyzing that. While they're doing all of this, also looking at what are the competitors in the market doing similar things? Who is going to be our target audience? Why will the target audience prefer us instead of our competitor? Also, definitely evaluating the risk factors and eventually creating a roadmap for themselves. So for me, this process was more important. Because, as I said, it's about a mindset. If we can get our children to start thinking differently, I think that's the start of one of the most successful journeys of a person's life. In times to come, what is it that we are aspiring for? Well, we are probably aspiring towards a complete tying up of the aspects of innovation, entrepreneurship, financial awareness, and management. We are at a very nascent stage right now. I'm going to be very upfront in stating this. It's not that we've, achieved some great milestones, We are at a very nascent stage of realizing our dreams that our schools will be the hubs of innovation and entrepreneurship, and our students will be the trigger in their immediate society and being able to influence people around them on the importance of developing these mindsets. Because often it is mistaken, and we have parental queries to that effect. Why should my child get into an entrepreneurship program? He does not, I don't want to get him into business. And that's why I talked about initially that it's not about having your own startup. It's about a mindset that you are developing. And for me and my, the organization that's Ryan Education, the schools and the students under our care, that's what drives us. That what is it that we can do more towards ensuring that our students are future ready for the uncertain world ahead of them. So that was a bit on, what we did, how we did, and obviously what are our plans ahead also with respect in the coming years.
Thank you very much, Nidhi, for bringing out very beautifully about the how to roll out that experiment systematically and continue to be learning on that journey. And also the word of caution that it's still early days for the program that is going on, and we have to collectively learn from that. But with that, we have on panel today three eminent people, and I really open the floor to them. Right on one part of it, I introduced what NIEPP is all about. Nidhi introduced how she went about, how Ryan schools went about introducing in their schools and her experience. Now this policy is there in front of us. We have Colonel Prem Prakash, who is director of at CSKM schools in New Delhi. We have Mr. Surender Sachdev, who is the principal of DPS Sushant Lok in Gurgaon. And we have Meenal Desai from GEMS Genesis in Ahmedabad. So can I request all three of you, anyone could go, just a request to all the gentlemen, if we can hear Meenal out, right, and let her put her point, and then we can build upon that.
Finger racking there.
Hi.
Hi.
Do I have the permission of the gentleman?
Yes, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you for bringing us to this forum, and thank you for sharing your views and all of that, and a very warm good afternoon to everybody here online. It is actually warm in Ahmedabad, and it's great to see so many of us interested in understanding what this could mean for schools. A lot of it has already been discussed by Shivain and by Nidhi ma'am and all of it, so I will probably not repeat all of that. And just to let you know that in principle, I absolutely agree with all of that, that we as a nation need this. There are 100 untrodden paths that exist in terms of what we need to do as we go ahead and all of that. And there are no right answers. There's just trial and error and iterations that we will have to keep doing. Just to understand, Shivain, if I'm on the right track, you want me to share my experience of how we are working with entrepreneurship in school, or you want me to comment on the NIEPP? Like, what is it that you want me to do?
So, I'm fine with your experience, or if a school really wants to roll out NIEPP,
okay,
because you are already doing so, what do you think should they do, and what challenges would they face?
Okay. So I will share a little bit of my experience and things that we've learned. So we are a relatively new school. We have up to grade 10, and what we realized is that children are capable of so much more, that it's we the adults who need to ask them the right questions, and we need to have better assessment patterns if we really want innovation to thrive and prosper. So there is a book, I don't know if any of you would be interested in it, but there's a book called How Innovation Works. It's by Matt Ridley. It's a fantastic book that I believe almost all of us should read. It talks about how innovation in general in the world around us works, and what are the prime factors like the policy lays down. And one of the prime most factors of innovation is the ability to exchange ideas, is the ability to talk to each other. So in exactly Matt's words, if you put it, he says, if you cut people off from exchange, you lower their chances of innovating. It's as simple as that. So the reason why Silicon Valley has a majority of startups happening there is not because just because of its weather or because silicon is available there. It is because people can freely exchange information. There are universities, there are companies which allow for transfer of knowledge. Fortunately, unfortunately, in our classrooms, there is very little knowledge transfer that happens between students. At times, we schools end up restricting it with actual policies to say, dare you talk? If you do, you are like, you had it kind of a thing. And then we leave it to certain areas and all where we expect them to talk. But one of the first things that we as a school we've tried to do is have the students talk to each other and talk more to each other during the class, making sure that our lesson plans allow for more discussions. Those discussions have to be in conjunction with whatever the learning objectives of the class are. But the more children can discuss and talk to each other, the better the chances of any sort of innovation planning going on, any sort of innovation to sustain in school. And the same applies to teachers as well. Honestly, no one teacher knows it all, right? All of us are constantly seeking and learning from each other. The more we can have our own teachers meet with each other, the more we can, as school leaders, the more we can devise exchange of information, free exchange of information within various departments and all of it, the easier it will be for everybody to move forward. So that's the first starting point for me, and a lot of things. But one thing that worked really well with us and our students was the idea of pop-up bazaars. So what we did was every Friday we would ask our students if they would want to host a stall, if they would want. So we would set up in the lunchtime. We would set up a few tables and a canopy and all that, and we called it the pop-up bazaar. And anybody who wanted to participate had to, of course, apply to the teacher who was responsible for it, and they had to get the quality check done. So if you're going to serve, say, cold coffee, or if you're going to sell bookmarks, you have to first show it to the teacher. And if the teacher kind of approves it or tastes the coffee, which means we got a lot of brownies and coffee. So if you want any of that to happen, you have to run it by the teacher once. And if it gets approved, you can do it in the school on that Friday. And you should see the excitement. Good Lord, any weekend evening carnival wouldn't have this level of excitement that our children did during pop-up bazaar. So Friday lunchtime was the most sought after time. Like there would be literal queues that would happen because
we are going to visit your school on Friday.
Don't come in April. It's too hot in Ahmedabad.
I was there last week in Bhavnagar. Friday. Yeah.
You're more than welcome. So that pop-up bazaar, see, all the theories that we teach students, all of them go for a toss as soon as they face customers, because they will have in their mind, I will sell my coffee for this much, I will do this much, blah, 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 blah. And then the customer hits them. And then there is either a queue that they can't manage or hisab that they can't do. They're leaning on each other. Can you serve coffee? Can I do this, etc., etc. So a team is built and all that. So the pop-up bazaar experience actually genuinely helped us and our students get a real flavor of what is it to be an entrepreneur. So start small. So again, just to reiterate, one is allow for exchange of information between students and teachers. Start small. A simple pop-up bazaar can lead to a lot many more things. Try that with a few classes, with a few things, and then kind of build on that. And then do what works in your context. The policy also says that. So if April is too hot for your weather, close the pop-up bazaar for April, open it in June. Innovation is about being agile. It is about being reflective, and it is about learning from what's working and what's not working. So stay in touch with what's happening on the ground and kind of keep building on that. But of course, we need to take all our stakeholders together. We need to speak to our parents about it. We need to speak to our teachers about it. It can't be one more additional thing that the teachers have to do. The teachers already have their plate full. We can't keep adding things there without taking something away from there. So, and there are a lot of other things that we have tried in school, but this is just something that I would like to share with everyone else who's present here. In terms of policy and what I would expect, or any suggestions that I would like to give to CBSE and all that, I'll probably fill out the form later. But and again, this could be a very wild thing to ask for, and I doubt CBSE would allow it. But if we really want innovators and entrepreneurs to thrive in schools and all of that, we need to allow entrepreneurs to open schools. We need to allow private funding to the extent where schools can be run by smaller, simpler individuals. The litany of paperwork that a school asks for, the nature of our education system that it is, allowing an entrepreneur to set up a school today is massively tiring. So the more difficult it is for an entrepreneur to get into school, the more difficult it will be for entrepreneurs to come out of schools. So if anybody is listening to this, please make sure that more and more young, interesting people can come and join. Honestly, I feel out of sync of where our children are. So my children, my students, when I say children, my students communicate with me in memes. So they send us memes on WhatsApp and on Instagram and all that, and I can't make any sense out of it. I have to go back to my own daughter back home to ask her, "Isne mujhe ye kya kaha hai? Please explain," because they work in a different language, they think differently. So we are out of sync with the reality of the youth today. And then us trying to decide for them becomes even more difficult. We need a lot many younger people to come and join, but very few people join education because of various systemic reasons. If only we can remove some of them, there will be more entrepreneurs coming in and many more coming out of the school. So
fantastic. Great point you made. And I think the last point really touched. The language is changing, and we really need to bring fresh mind in school for this to thrive. So, Mr. Surinder,
thank you so much.
You are in the
gentlemen.
You are in the hotbed of innovation called Gurgaon. All startups get born here. How should we cope up? What should we do?
So first thing first, I'm really impressed the way Neenal and Nidhi has initiated their beginning point. In this time of, lot of changes are happening, and especially in science and technology, we do not know what kind of job profiles are available in future. So because things are changing very fast, it is not important to learn something, it is important to unlearn something. Whatever learning we had done, we must learn how to, unlearn and start new learning. So for that, young students they may need key skills like creativity, innovation, empathy, problem solving, teamwork, etc. But I just not interested to repeat whatever has been said in past. I'm very impressed by one word about whether India becomes superpower or not. So becoming superpower is very, very important. Us to have startups and scientific mindset for sure. But at the same time, development growth doesn't happen only with infrastructure, or maybe finances, maybe, lot of arms available in country. Rather, what kind of society we are going to build? So innovation and entrepreneurship is about starting when rather what kind we are going to develop. We are about innovation a lot. So for we must ensure that we have the mind innovation. Idea, any kind of idea, any field, how to resolve conflicts. Growth doesn't happen in silo. If we wish to be a superpower, every individual of this country has to grow. One segment of this country is growing, another segment of this country is not growing. Men are growing, the girls are still in a situation where they have to take a lot of permission, and there are so many types of taboos. So therefore, it is very, very important. Whatever we do for the society. Some kind of new innovation, new ideas has to be brought in so that, our education system again start or instill a culture where new ideas are, I would say, inculcated, innovation and entrepreneurship is brought in, and we must focus on education to play a central role to develop our country and develop a new society. So let us focus on how we are going to develop very, very progressive and without any conflict society. Only then we would be becoming a superpower. And this is possible only if we have that innovative mind.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sachdev. I have Colonel Prem Prakash, and Colonel Prem Prakash brings a unique experience. So one is, he just moved on from being principal of Radiant International School in Patna, which is thriving city for education, a tier 2. And right now he is director of CSKM school, which is a boarding school. So he brings a tier 2 and a boarding school experience. So in the context of both these things that you see, how do you see this policy working for the schools? What challenges do you see, sir, in the implementation of these policies?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Sivesh. Firstly, great to see Meenal here and our participant in IIM Ahmedabad Study School Leaders, the course that we did way back in 2019. And of course, all other guests who are here. This talking about innovation, one anecdote, in Patna, I used to be moving from one place to the other on my, way back from school to home. And there was this person on his cycle, and he would sell the dosas by the roadside. And he had all that modified cycle with some containers on either side of his bike. And there used to be a number of people there and really thronged in a way. And one day, I stopped and then asked him, कि भाई क्या है? कि sir, आप test कीजिए and this मेरा जो idli है, that is the best here. And so in the sense that, you see, he had done this and he's been doing this on the very modified his cycle and in that hot sun. In fact, I presented him a, one umbrella also one day, because every day I used to see him next day. Then the another, there is a student, a young boy by the roadside, and he would have his, after college probably, he would come and set up his table and put up, those mobile screens and other things, and all the passers-by, they would stop. And, so he would probably make his whatever pocket money or otherwise. The other thing, experience that I had, even last batch, there in Patna. So the commerce students, they all went and interviewed the vendors along the roadside and all the people, who make the paper mashi, things, and who don't have proper market. And the other vendors also, the sabji wala and everybody else. And made very interesting videos and a lot of lessons from, these people. The other thing, in fact, I wanted to read out during my farewell, one of the students, who got that award, he was in that reckoning for, and during this ideathon, where he mentioned that through the river of life, be my boat, like the thermal floater, my emotions float. So this boy, Sparsh, and so he wanted 15,000 rupees to get some, stuff imported from abroad for his pilot project. And unfortunately, I think that got delayed, and he finally could not then come up with the pilot, this one, or the prototype. And the other experience that I had there, during this ideathon, there was almost, when we wanted to put up, let's say even 10 or 20, these projects, we found it a little difficult. So we had all our teachers, or at least 5-6 teachers across, various classes, junior, middle, and senior, go to various classes and talk about these, to various students and all the classes. It took 2, 3, 4 days, and then try and impress upon them what is happening and what are the, thing. Then one day we had a session with the parents, to tell them about this, what is this ideathon and so on. So what I am actually sharing, through all these anecdotes is, the opportunity, the challenges, and the support that we required, which we are talking about. So I think about this innovation, we've been doing it, talking over last 20, 30, 40 years. When I look back my own army life, I remember in Pathankot in 80s, there's something innovation. So even in the army, we were coming up with various gadgets. And, thus our Ludhiana and other, the Jugaad market, wagera, been thriving for years, actually. However, now what has happened is that we are trying to, bring in more cohesiveness within the schools and otherwise these vocational training, which have partially sort of succeeded. We don't have very many ITIs and, polytechnics in our country. We lag behind much, even compared to the Western countries, forget about China. So we don't even have one per block and all that. So everybody wants to do a degree and go for whatever college and things like that. And so I think, this policy that has come up, of course, never too late. And we need to create that kind of ecosystem within our school, motivate firstly our teachers and parents. Students are there. In fact, in Patna again, I had gone to these government schools, close by, whom we used to normally call them as part of that community contact, things like that, when we were doing our ATL and other, program. So tremendous talent, in the community away from town. And it's only that how we get all this talent and expertise to sort of get them to work and solve the sort of whatever problem that community has. I think there is sky is the limit. And as Steve Jobs, mentioned, stay hungry, stay foolish. And so I think, and Mr. Srivesh, you bring in this platform of probably to trying to connect all of us, connect students, give an opportunity to them how to go about it. The Niti Aayog, again, the Tinker Boot Camp, I was part of this to come up with the digital products and all that. So I think very interesting. Even like Meenal was talking about, this bazaar, that innovation, startup bazaar kind of thing. So even this, they tried a little bit, the boot camp for subjects. Like, we have typical, history, chemistry, physics classes. You do it, project kind. And you have that change, make a little, not a little, I think real shaking is required, shake up. Otherwise, it moves very slow. And so even because everybody, thinks of the exam thing and all that. So now, of course, with the CUAT, now combined university with the other things which will, so maybe things will change. But there are.
So I have a question, sir, and some of the things that you have posed, I just want to trigger a discussion on all the people.
Yes, yes.
So, when I was a kid, in class 6th or maybe 7th, we were taught how to make a soap in chemistry lesson.
Correct.
Right? But we never made a soap. We knew the 6 steps required to make a soap. Right? And I'm not sure whether my chemistry teacher also knew how to actually make the soap other than those 6 steps. My question is, with this policy coming in the next year, we can have students make their soaps?
No, we will have, and we add, this commercial
I think Colonel Prakash is on lag, right? Surinder sir or Nidhi, would you?
Yeah. So very important that we heard from Nidhi and Colonel Prakash that a lot of activities are happening in different schools. Teachers are involved, bringing in new ideas and new innovation, and they are coming from the. But this innovation set, every has to bring new in the class. You can policy from the and some policies coming from the top and at the ground level. That is going to work. So we're going to work every person work in a school where in education, maybe beyond school, maybe beyond classrooms, maybe even while creating core values for the society or for the school. So I think innovation is beyond only growth, finances, new startup, new ideas, new innovations. Rather, it is some kind of something new has to be brought in. Even talking about the core value of the system, core values in the system.
Right. No, I agree. Nidhi, any comments from you?
Yeah, Shivesh, as you know, I talked earlier and what is being spoken by Meenal, Colonel Prakash, or Mr. Strengthrow also for that matter.
Any.
There is a lot of shift in the teaching methods. Yes, that exam, padho marks, somewhere that mindset is still there. But truly within the classrooms, if you go to see, and I can definitely, and you know, these panel of people who are here today, if I can use the term, we are all coming from privileged schools, right? We may form a very small segment of the schools that are there in the country, but for sure, there is lots happening in these schools. And even if I were to read about, you know, little talukas where things are happening, there is a conscious effort towards the shift in the teaching learning process. So leave alone soap, I'm sure they're doing much more than just making soap. And that is happening. It is for sure happening in the smallest of the school across the country.
Right. Colonel Saab, we had lost you.
Yeah, correct. There's an electricity, you know, it had gone up. You know, so what I was saying is that, you know, like ma'am was mentioning, that we can definitely come up with these. We are doing it. It's just a matter of we promoting them, we sort of motivating them, sensitizing our students. In fact, would also go to a step that contact, you know, with the community, like I was mentioning. You know, so we've been calling these people during summer camps, students venturing out, contacting a lot of these things, you know, these small time vendors and the SMEs, you know, these enterprises, make visits to these ITIs and polytechnics. And definitely, I think it is possible, very much possible. And it will also help the local community to connect with schools. Maybe we can have that exchange of, you know, also ideas.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
So what I hear from you is it's the policy is the right policy. It is in the right direction. Time has come, and schools are already doing, some bit of things, and really it was timely. Any one challenge, all of you, would you like to mention in implementing this?
Like I had mentioned, you know, this challenge is the ecosystem we need to create. And that again will not happen overnight. So whether it is parents, the teachers, the student, and probably we will have to convince them by giving them some sort of, and also have some impact assessment kind. How have these innovations and, you know, these projects and whatever entrepreneurship, how has it helped? Probably, you know, we can give them even examples of, let's say, last year, like India had maximum, you know, startups. So all these people, you know, who rose to the occasion, despite constraint, despite lockdown, despite lot of, you know, hardships, but then they did not give up, you know, they benefited. And when we, the data, when we say that normal government jobs are not there, private also this thing is not there, our market, 90% unskilled market, we can connect. So we can really, if you're able to convince them.
Essentially, you are saying it's a society challenge.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Surinder sir?
I think even mentorship is missing. You know,
mentor
all
ecosystem?
this, all this kind of innovation needs some kind of mentorship. So there has to be some kind of, system where we have many mentors who can give ideas, who can help them. Idea has to be brought by the students themselves, but at the same time, how to nurture it. So that would be very, very important. Like, that is what we are missing, because every teacher and every school would be focusing on, at the moment, I won't say rote learning, but yes, we have a structured way of teaching and structured way of curriculum. So focusing on structured way of curriculum is also, binding us to, look straight, not here and there. So
And we
that
want
is
some
one challenge.
flexibility.
That is one challenge.
So the
I think.
ask is a more flexibility.
Absolutely. And how we are going to award or reward, right?
Right.
If somebody is doing innovation and somebody is bringing new ideas, can we move away from mark system and help the child because he is doing something different? How to quantify it, and that would be one challenge, I believe. And
I
it
agree.
has
And
been always in last few years.
and I can talk about some of the things which is happening, not in school space, but how IITs, for example, they are tackling this challenge. So about 6 to 7 years back, certainly the IIT system recognized that students, they don't want to do the regular course, but they want to build startups. Right? Now, if you are the director of IIT, what do you do? And a point of, check note here is that IITs have a huge lot of liberty. They are autonomous bodies and all that, right? Now, they went about recognizing this problem and they said that, okay, why don't we create a course credit for building a startup? You get a time off from your timetable, use that timetable to build the startup. And there's the assessment methodology which was brought into recognizing your effort in building a startup, right? But that was because there was a system which was at liberty to do so. Right, and they created some answers around it. Not all IITs have done. This is the experiment that we learned what happened at IIT Delhi, right? But fair point, Surinder sir, about the question that you really. Nidhi, one challenge.
I think it's what Colonel Prem Prakash talked about, the shift in getting the stakeholders to think differently. And I'll give you an example. Around 5 years back, I was talking that, we changed our teaching learning process. We introduced student-led learning. Trust me, in a city like Pune and Hyderabad, we had parents coming and complaining to the principal and saying that teachers don't know how to teach and what to teach. And that is why they have told the children to take a lead in the class and start teaching.
No, it's such a, I agree.
So what do you say to that? And poor teachers were perplexed with these kind of, parental pressure. What do we do about it? So I think that's
I absolutely
one
agree.
thing.
And I think that's why in the stakeholder map, which I created, I really put the whole parent and society thing at I should have put it more red than orange, perhaps, right? Because, any change that comes, parents have this very fixed mindset because they learned a thing in a particular way 30 years back, and they want the same thing to be perhaps superimposed. And then we have all this. So one of the examples which we struggle with is introduce a concept of student assessing other student, right? And there's a guidance, and this also I also teach in MBA programs where I do this, right? Where again this challenge comes, and there's a guidance, right? Every student will be assessed by 2 other students, and if the grading between 2 students is more than 5, which means that you have not done a fair assessment. Now, what would be the response in the class of MBAs? Accepted? This assessment methodology is accepted, or there's a complete, the teacher is a failure. He's shirking work.
They would accept, I think, over time.
Over time, right, Karnu Saab? So over time, right? In the first few batches, it took me a lot of, gentle nudge for this to happen, and eventually it did. But a change like this, and believe me, everyone, once they started accepting it, they realized the learning is far higher, far superior, right? It's far more stickier, right? There's more fun moment that they can share across multiple batches. But it does take time, and perhaps we are at that cusp moment in the education history where things are going to change, and NIEPP is a step in that direction. To all the friends who are here, if you have any questions, happy to take questions. You can unmute and ask questions. It's 4:15. That was our time. I have Shrikant Gupta, who's put some question here. As per NIEP guideline, the pillars, so there are 6 pillars. Yes, yes, Gupta ji. Any question on that?
Yes, I am interested to say for basic education, teachers' mindset has to be changed first. They are still not up to the mark. And if I go for the surrounding schools and nearby areas, the schools, they are hiring teachers of very low quality and the skills and the knowledge and training program. So it is a very, very big challenge going to be in time to come.
No, sure. And I think Meenal pointed out that problem in the last part of
Yeah,
our
you have already discussed. Most of the speakers has come out with the idea. So we have to go for the basic improvisation of education system. Then it may lead to further things. What has been
And
discussed.
also, Mr. Gupta, the third pillar is precisely about that. So third pillar is about incentives and training of teachers. So it talks about continuous, development of teachers and bringing innovation teaching for teachers. And just to flag, last year, we at Think Startup, we trained about 5,000 teachers in teaching entrepreneurship in schools, right? And again, we are rolling out a program with CENTA, which starts in the month of May on teachers training. So on one front, government is doing, and you have a fair point that teachers need to be brought up to speed with this new change. And perhaps within the school framework, perhaps that's important message for all educators to work with teachers to keep them abreast. In fact, maybe we had one round of session with Ryan teachers in Pune, right? So all the new hires which were there in her school, on day one or maybe in the first week of that phase, there was one sensitization program where we participated together.
Exactly, you are right. Because what I am finding in recent time, some of the smart students, when they are asking some certain problem from their teachers, so they are recommending to go for Google or some other search. They are not in competency to reply them back or to come along with them to go for the practical training programs and to teach them how to go ahead with the subject. And many more things.
Of course, and I think that's a big area to be filled, and perhaps the method of teaching will change. But this wind of change will drive and force teachers to adopt new pedagogies to be teaching, right?
Right. Thank you. Thank you very much.
So friends, I think we are done. Siddharth, would you conclude the session?
Definitely, sir. Definitely, and it was really, really, exciting. Rather than just hearing these another roundtable, I think it was a really exciting roundtable, and getting to hear such innovative practices already being practiced in different schools in Ahmedabad and Vancouver of schools, and and the principals thinking on the right lines, and also right now the educational bodies implementing the policy. So I personally am also an entrepreneur. So, I can really think that, back in the days when when we were in schools, we had a lot of ideas, so just a quick thought, just a quick story. So when in class 6, a student dreams of, like, I want to become a pilot. I want to start this. I want to build that. I want to sell that. But as soon as the student gets closer to the board examinations, it kind of boils down to, no, I don't want all that. I just want to score 99 and 100. And after that, once they graduate from the schools, what happens is it again streamlines, and it boils down to, no, I want to get into DU. I want to get into all these good all these good campuses with high kind of the bar to get in. So I think somewhere we lose the track of we just sort of lose our focus on realizing our dreams, and our focus gets realigned to just going to the top campus, going to the top kind of colleges and getting the right placements. I think this needs to change, and the only stage where it can change is right from the school stage. From classes 3, from classes 6. I think we need to actually change the mindset right from a very early stage. And I think this was a really great discussion with means all of you, and we would at Think Startup, we would definitely would like to initiate an individual discussion with all of you, and take on the challenges with the individual schools, and work with you into implementing and driving this down with less friction, and make this a productive outcome at the end of the day. And that would be all from my side, and thank you all of you for taking out such precious times. I know this is a typical weekday and we all are already saturated with our work, but still you all had taken out such precious time, and that is really something to be acknowledged, and a very warm gratitude to all of you. And definitely I would love to be in touch, and we should have more such roundtables in future as well, because this is just the start, but a lot has to be done, but baby steps. That is all I'll say. Thank you, sir. So Mr. Shivesh, yeah.
Thanks, everyone. We'll wrap up. We'll close the session.